Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth your time and bandwidth. Today's game is El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron HD Edition, a remake of the biblically adjacent action art game. In 2024, does El Shaddai survive judgment? Let's find out. El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron HD is a remaster of the original 2011 action game that released on 360, PS3, and I think it was a cult classic, maybe? Anyway, you play as Enoch, Noah's great-granddad, with the game very loosely based on the mythology found in the non-canon biblical text, the Book of Enoch. An angelic group called the Watchers have gone rogue against God, and Enoch is tasked to inflict some of the Lord's judgment upon them by killing them. You'll be aided by Lucifer, who cheekily will often stop time and break the fourth wall to give tutorials, or just have cell phone conversations with God in the background. The story is definitely more abstract than grounded, which you'll find is a theme for most of the game, with not a lot meant to be taken literally. It also has a hilarious amount of homoerotic subtext, as damaging enemies, or yourself getting damaged, knocks the armor off them, and every character is a hot bishy boy. Hope you like those chiseled abs. The gameplay itself is a mix between third-person action, platforming, and 2D platforming. The base combat is in the vein of a God of War or early Devil May Cry. Fixed cameras with your usual weak, heavy, and aerial attacks. It mixes things up a bit with 3 weapon types, all of which can be stolen from enemies mid-combat. Outside of combat, as mentioned, there's a 3D fixed camera for the platforming, which is, well, it's not great, but I'll get to that later. The game also often switches to a 2D perspective for more platforming, which is serviceable, though 3D sprites on a 2D plane make it feel a little wonky like the Subspace Emissary from Brawl. The loop itself is simple, as you often go to an arena, fight some guys, then platform to the next area ad nauseum. However, what makes the game interesting is its absolutely insane visual style and imagination. The realms you visit border on surreal, with the game throwing you in overly saturated heavenly clouds, hellish glowing towers, a cyberpunk city where you ride a light cycle. Its abstraction representing theme and emotional mood, and the game leans very heavily into it, making that the most memorable part of the game. The HD remaster here only really ups the visuals and the UI, as the core game itself hasn't been changed, and that's honestly El Shaddai, a more abstract art piece than DMC, with a bizarre story and a whole ton of imagination. So what do I like about El Shaddai? Well, the art direction here is just so insane, I adore it. Y'all know I love my artsy-fartsy games, and El Shaddai presents such a strong visual vision of what its creator wanted, I can't help but get absorbed in it. Additionally, I love how weird this game's story is. Enoch and Satan riding motorcycles through a dystopian city, or cartoony Nephilim blobs bouncing around storybook land, while super serious monologuing goes on in the background is really something else. And lastly, combat is fine, which I know isn't much of a pro, but I thought I'd mention it, as while it isn't particularly deep, I never really got bored of it until the very end. When it comes to the bad, the 3D platforming here is aggravating to the point of infuriating, with it never feeling good and the 2D platforming only faring slightly better. Additionally, story and visuals, while weird and wonderful, are so highly abstracted and intentionally obfuscate the underlying story that I imagine that'll frustrate a lot of people that want a clear narrative. And lastly, the game somehow still suffers from tanking frame rates and performance issues despite being a remaster, which was really disappointing. The original game also suffered from this. It seemed like an easy win, but I didn't notice any big quality of life updates here besides prettier visuals. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And El Shaddai is a game for a specific type of player, one who enjoys games more to see a creator's vision manifest than perhaps engaging story or gameplay, as it was visually mesmerizing and jaw-dropping at the expense of everything else. I am particularly disappointed this remaster didn't fix any of the technical issues, and if you value gameplay above all else, El Shaddai will probably disappoint. But for those like myself who are just here for the ride, El Shaddai definitely delivers one wild one. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played El Shaddai, did you play it back in the PS360 era? Are you going to check it out now? Let me know what you think in the comments, but regardless, go out there and maybe give it a look.